Hello everyone, welcome to Broadview. My name is Joseph. History appears to repeat itself in a predictable pattern. The past 2 years we faced COVID-19 worldwide, but there have been other global infectious diseases in the past. The Black Death, which took out more than half of Europe's population in 1347, is the most famous death toll in human history. An astrologer once warned King Philip VI of France in a report that he believed the Black Death would strike at that time because of, get this, the positions of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. They formed a line from an astrological standpoint, forming a so-called 3-star synastry, which he believed was the cause of the plague. Of course, looking at it today, we might think that this report is a little dubious, but the triple-star synastry referenced in the article was also mentioned by the Indian prodigy Anand. According to Anand, he predicted the global outbreak of COVID-19, and that's because he saw the conjunction of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in his astrology technique. Maybe you're thinking that this is all too coincidental, right? How could these 3 stars have only recently aligned before 2 worldwide plagues struck? Is it possible to gain insight into the future using astrology? Actually, it's not just astrology. We've also introduced a number of prophets in the past who could accurately foretell what would happen before it happens. For those of you who are open-minded to this phenomenon, it forces you to ponder whether it's possible to foretell the future. If that's the case, how exactly could they foresee it? Are our lives predetermined, or in other words, fated? Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so that you won't miss our future content. We'd imagine that there are many people who believe that if a given stage of life were to be repeated, they wouldn't go about things the same way. Usually the decision appears to be completely unintentional at that moment. Perhaps you woke up early today, you went to work just to run into your true love around the corner. In reality, Cristiano Ronaldo met his present girlfriend, Georgina Rodriguez, only because she was filling in for a coworker on duty, which gave her the opportunity to meet Ronaldo, who happened to be out shopping. Now, this was the beginning of a completely different life for her. In reality, if you think about it, you may have come across numerous coincidences in your own life. You just thought of a buddy and he reached out or called you. You thought of a song and someone hums it next to you. Or you have that gut feeling that something is going to happen and it eventually does happen. Precognitive dreams that we spoke of before are another clear example of this phenomenon. If you're interested to see that, click on the link below. In the video, we mentioned a very famous precognitive dream. 2 days before his assassination, President Abraham Lincoln had a nightmare. He had a dream that he was attending a funeral in the White House. He turned around at that point in the dream and questioned the guard next to him. "What's going on?" The president had been assassinated. The guards informed him unexpectedly. President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated 2 days later on April 14, 1865. This was the first time a president had been assassinated by an assassin since the country's founding. At that time, it must have been unbelievable. What happened next, though, was even more surprising. On November 22, 1963, just 98 years after this assassination, US President John F. Kennedy was shot to death in his presidential car. Despite the fact that the 2 presidents were killed so far apart, there were numerous coincidences. For example, Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, and John F. Kennedy was elected 100 years later in 1960. Furthermore, both presidents had previously served in the White House of Representatives before being elected president. Lincoln was elected to Congress in 1847, and Kennedy was elected in 1947. This was exactly 100 years apart again. Their vice presidents were both named Johnson, and the 2 vice presidents' birth years are exactly 100 years apart. On top of that, Lincoln was assassinated in the Ford Theater, and Kennedy was assassinated in a Ford convertible. And the First Lady happened to be there when they were both assassinated. It leads one to think, are these incredible coincidences, or are things fated and somehow connected? Coincidence usually means that something with tiny probability of happening happens at the same time as something else very improbable. It appears to be a form of randomness that should have no significance. When we look back on history, however, some events do not appear explainable by coincidence. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, Crown Prince of Austria-Hungary, decided to change the itinerary while attending a military parade. At that time, everyone knew that the itinerary had been changed. They only forgot to tell the driver. So the driver continued on the original route, and when the convoy reached Franz Joseph Street, they encountered an assassin who had been prepared to ambush them. What's more incredible is that just as the assassin was about to kill the Crown Prince and his wife, the convoy came to a halt because someone informed the driver that the route had changed. As the driver was about to adapt to the changes, 2 gunshots killed the Crown Prince and his wife, triggering the First World War. It ultimately changed the lives of people all over the world. However, it was discovered shortly after the end of the First World War that the Crown Prince and his wife were in a car with the license plate number A111118. The First World War ended on November 11th, 1918, which is 111118, which means that the car that started the war also marked the end of the war, which is pretty nuts. To give another example, the Hoover Dam used to be the largest dam in the United States in terms of its water storage capacity. Its construction began in 1931. However, when the dam was about to be completed on December 20th, 1935, a worker, Patrick William Tierney, accidentally fell into the water during construction. Horribly, it was later discovered that on the same day 14 years before William's death, a worker had accidentally died during the exploration of the dam, and that person turned out to be William's father, John Gregory Tierney. You may have noted that while these coincidences are objectively mere coincidences, they appear to be out of the ordinary. They are obviously extremely rare events, yet for many people they occur enough times to take notice and ponder their significance. This phenomenon aroused the interest of a person who has conducted extensive investigation, and that person is none other than Carl Jung, one of the world's 3 most prominent psychologists. Jung himself had encountered many coincidences. He explained, "I was performing psychotherapy with a young woman one day in 1928 when she informed me that someone had given her a golden beetle in a dream a few days before. A noise sounded from behind me, coming from the window. When I turned around, I saw a golden beetle." Jung was astonished for a few seconds before getting up and opening the window. Then, unexpectedly, the beetle even wanted to fly into the room. Jung said, "I must admit this is the strangest thing that has happened in my life. After all, golden beetles aren't common, and insects have phototaxis. So why would they want to fly into a dark room in the morning?" The beetle appeared despite all odds, and it wasn't the only coincidence that happened in his life. Jung called such coincidences synchronicity. What does it mean? He believed that synchronicity coincidences do not happen by chance. On the surface, there is no causal relationship between the 2 events, but in fact there is a deeper connection between the 2 things. Any one of them doesn't look strange, but it's pretty unusual if 2 things happen at the same time. As a result, this is a meaningful coincidence, where the meaning itself connects these 2 things that are not causally related. This type of synchronicity or meaningful coincidence occurs all the time around us, according to Jung. The difference is whether we recognize it or not. For example, if you walk past someone, you might not realize that they were born in the same year, month, and day as you. If you're aware of it, you'll say, "Wow, that's incredible." But if you aren't, you'll doubt it could happen. It's because you can't know everything and hence can't see the whole picture of the world clearly. Many sages and enlightened beings of our recent history taught that we are living in a state of ignorance and unaware of the interconnectedness of the karmic relationships around us. Really, the way the world operates couldn't be entirely dependent on probability and chance. There must be something more fundamental and subtle than probability alone. This thing is operating the world, and Jung really wanted to uncover it. He eventually claimed to have found it, and he called it the collective unconsciousness. The human psychic structure, according to Jung, is separated into 3 layers. The ego, or consciousness, is at the very top. Below the level of consciousness, there are 2 other profound entities. The first is the state of unconsciousness. The unconsciousness cannot be controlled by the consciousness, yet it can impact and influence your consciousness and judgment. The collective unconsciousness, which is the shared consciousness of all mankind, is the deepest thing in the human psychological structure below the unconsciousness. And we're not only talking about people living in the present, but also including ancient people. He believed that human beings' collective unconsciousness is always connected, much like a network with people all over the world connecting. Jung believed that the meaningful coincidence originates from this collective unconsciousness. Many remarkable human phenomena can be explained by this collective unconsciousness. Jung has also researched religion, theology, and archaeology. There was a problem that always bothered him. He discovered that civilizations, myths, and religions from all around the world had some similarities. Pyramids, for example, are found all over the world and are created around the same time, with extremely similar appearances. Myths are no exception. Whether it was the Mayan culture, Mesopotamia civilization, or the Yangtze civilization, they all talked about analogous myths and stories, such as the Great Flood myth and the snake god, among many others. If we assume that these civilizations never communicated or were connected from prehistoric times, it could be that similar ideas originated in the consciousness of people from different cultures and different times. We humans have long since attained conscious communication, according to Jung, because people all over the world are connected from time to time through the collective unconsciousness. As a result, while we cannot know what each other is thinking, collective unconsciousness allows us to perceive the feelings of a group of people or the entire human species. It's hardly surprising then that there are similar civilizations, religions, and mythologies all over the world. As a result, the astrology we discussed at the start of the video may actually make use of the collective unconsciousness, allowing astrology to anticipate future synchronicity events with a high likelihood. In fact, Jung considered astrology to be the best proof of synchronicity's existence. Jung also collected 483 couples' astrologies and compared them with the astrologies of 31,731 other peoples to prove the theory at the time. Then he found that people who often become husband and wife have a specific combination pattern in their astrology. The chances of this happening are only 1 in 62.5 million, according to Jung's calculations. Just like the birth of the universe, if there was a tiny, slight deviation in its development, surely we wouldn't be where we are today, sort of like the butterfly effect describes. Could it be possible that a pair of unseen hands are at work behind the scenes, controlling everything? Could it be that things are predetermined and set into motion to follow that predetermined path? These are questions I love to ask. As Albert Einstein famously put it, coincidence is God's way of keeping anonymity. Will there come a time when our technology is advanced enough for us to discover that synchronicity truly exists? Could it also be that those former prophets, astrologers, eminent monks, sages, and enlightened beings are actually people who could see or experience the collective subconsciousness through cultivation or other methods, allowing them to see aspects of humanity's future? As we all know, the scientific world has come to know many things, but it will always be limited to the latest accepted theory and, of course, the latest technology available. Based on these limitations, it currently seems impossible to prove or support the idea of synchronicity scientifically. Perhaps you watching this video right now is synchronicity or fate playing out. Well, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching,